And a good afternoon. I'm Lon Gonzalez, and this is South Texas Midday. Attorney Thomas J. Henry says Corpus Christi Mayor Paulette Guajardo and council members Roland Barrera and Mark Scott are what Henry said were standing in the way of progress when it comes to the issue of naming rights for the city's multi-purpose venue, the American Bank Center. Councilmember Eric Cantu this week called out his fellow councilman, concerning the naming rights and Henry's bid for renaming the venue. Henry has offered $12.5 million over a 10-year period for those rights. There's also another offer on the table from an unnamed group. While there has been talk of personal politics being involved in that process, Mayor Guajardo and Councilman Barrera believe Cantu and Henry have misunderstood the naming rights process. City officials will be meeting with members of the current venue management group, OVG 360, sometime next week to discuss the issue. 2 men were arrested in connection to a homicide in Alice. 18-year-old Diego Cael Diaz Martinez and 22-year-old Gabriel Rodriguez were charged with murder this week in the shooting death of Isaiah Salinas. Salinas' body was found outside a residence in the Rancho Alegre area just west of Alice after reports of gunfire from that area. Jim Wells County deputies responded. They found Salinas in that area and he later died at a local hospital. Jim Wells County Sheriff Guy Baker says both Diaz Martinez and Rodriguez have a $1.8 million bond each in connection to that crime. The 89th Texas legislature ended its 140-day sprint earlier this week. Throughout it, lawmakers set Texas's budget for the next 2 years and passed some of their top priority legislation, but definitely not all of it. In fact, our representatives in the Texas House and Senate filed nearly 9,000 bills this session, but only around 1,200 made it to the governor's desk. That means just shy of 14% of the bills filed actually passed. Despite jubilation of a job well done, the Texas Newsroom's Nina Banks reports some lawmakers are now mourning what could have been with their dead bills.
Some bills never go anywhere. Others make it to a committee but are stalled to be heard on the House or Senate floor. Some move in one chamber but die in the other. Dead, yes, but forgotten, never. The death of a bill is just an occupational hazard for lawmakers. Still, it doesn't soften the blow. Take Representative John Rosenthal, a Houston Democrat. Way back in November, he filed a bill that would stop marriage licenses from being issued to minors. That bill stopped short on the Senate floor.
Well, the fact that my personal favorite passed off the House floor died in the Senate, I'm sad about that.
This was Rosenthal's 4th session in the House. It was the second for Representative Caroline Harris Davila, a Round Rock Republican. At the end, she says she always thinks of the bills that didn't quite make it over the finish line.
One of those is more transparency in lobbying in the building and for different people. I think we had, I think you've heard of the taxpayer-funded lobbying bill, and I would love to see more progress towards that next session.
Another much talked about bill that died in the 89th legislature was HB 186, which would have banned minors from using social media. The bill made it pretty far before it missed a key deadline late in session. Its author, Republican House Representative Jared Patterson of Frisco, lamented its death on social media, calling it the biggest disappointment of his career. Patterson wrote that he'd, quote, felt the weight of an entire generation of kids who've had their mental health severely handicapped as a result of the harms of social media. Representative Venton Jones, a Dallas Democrat, lost a few bills he filed this session, but he told the Texas Newsroom he was especially sad about one in particular.
HB 50. That was a bill that would work to improve HIV testing across our state by making sure that if a person went to their doctors to get screened for STIs, that an HIV test would be offered as a part of STI screenings.
Jones is the first openly HIV-positive member of the Texas House, but he says he's not going to give up.
While that bill didn't make it this legislative session, I'm going to keep on trying, keep on working to make sure that we're improving, healthcare access and all the other issues we have to work on for our state as we move into the interim in the next session.
On both sides of the aisle, lawmakers can agree that a bill they've spent their time on only to never see the light of day is devastating. But luckily, they've got some time to prep for the future. Lawmakers' next regular session isn't until 2027. Until then, they can work to get their legislation off the cutting room floor and freshen up for next time. I'm Nina Banks in Austin.
First, it was Calallen softball team that brought home a state title and trophy. Now the London Pirates have won their second 3A D1 state baseball title, defeating Texarkana Liberty-Eylau 4-3 in the championship game. Pirates starting pitcher Ethan Ortega was named MVP with 3 strikeouts while allowing only 2 hits, 2 runs, and 3 walks after 5 innings of play. He was also 1 for 2 at the plate for London. Meanwhile, the Calallen Wildcats team, a baseball team, they're heading back to the state 4A championship for the second straight year. The last time the Wildcats took the state title was in 2008. They take on Texarkana Pleasant Grove today at Dell Diamond in Round Rock. When 2 group home employees were arrested last month for assaulting a man with severe autism, it highlighted failures in the state's care system that advocates and a federal judge have repeatedly criticized for its failures to investigate and combat abuse and neglect. Paul Flav has more.
The May arrest of 2 Maufu home health employees in San Antonio follows the near death of a 15-year-old at another Maufu facility in Sugar Land. In that 2024 case, the boy's attorney told the state he had been over-medicated, nearly to death. In a statement, Beth Mitchell with Disability Rights Texas told the Texas newsroom that these are not isolated events. Quote, "The reason these systemic issues persist is because the state has failed to establish a regulatory system that holds providers accountable. The Health and Human Services Commission regulates these providers. Its investigators have been criticized by numerous advocates and families, as well as by a federal judge, who levied $100,000 a day fines against the commissioner over failures to promptly investigate abuse and neglect. In an email, the department responded that the most recent legislature had approved funding to hire nearly 36 more investigators. They also raised rates for providers, which had been criticized for paying employees less per hour than many fast food jobs. Justin Botter is Vice President of Long-Term Care and Intellectual Disabilities at the Center for Healthcare Services. He says the new $13 an hour is still not enough.
If you can get the rates raised to improve quality, the rest all falls in line.
HHSC says Maufu Home Health currently operates 37 group homes, and there are currently 98 pending investigations against the provider for abuse and neglect. Jeff Duncan's stepson lives in one of Maufu's facilities in San Antonio, separate from the one where the alleged assault took place. He says it's dirty and the staff are ill-trained, but they don't have many other options. Duncan and his wife have gone to Austin to advocate for more funding for providers, but his experience with lawmakers has left him cynical.
It's just about money. I mean, they'll tell you what you want to hear, and in the end, nothing gets done.
He says they're now trying to move their son to a new facility and are looking at one right now. I'm Paul Flav in San Antonio.
Debris from the SpaceX Starship's recent test flight has washed up on a beach in Mexico, prompting local officials to take action. The debris is coming ashore on Baghdad Beach, raising concerns for Mexican officials who are now collecting the items as evidence. Along with canisters that have been collected, fishermen in the area have also spotted what they describe as truck-sized pieces of debris floating ashore. Tamaulipas state government officials addressed the issue Tuesday, saying they plan to file a complaint with federal authorities. Chances are you've probably heard the messaging from several different community members on both KEDT TV and KEDT FM about the possibility of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting losing funding that's been allocated for use by public broadcasting facilities. We speak with our general manager, Don Dunlap, about the situation.
39% of KDT's funding comes from a community service grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. We refer to it as CPB. It was set up in 1967 to be an insulation between government funding and political influence. And that has been successful up until now.
Funding for the CPB, as we mentioned, is allocated by Congress 2 years in advance, so money from fiscal years 26 and 27 would be cut entirely should the bill pass by both houses of Congress. That would total to just over $1 billion.
The feasibility studies that we've seen done for the impact on stations shows that KDT and 5 other public television stations and about 6 or 7 public radio stations in Texas would ultimately go off the air with the cut of federal funding.
If federal money for the CPB is lost, listeners in rural areas would be greatly affected, and only larger urban areas would possibly be able to continue their services. Help from local representatives is what's needed now.
In conversations with Vicente Gonzalez from the Valley, he's very supportive and has always been supportive of public television, public radio. Congressman McLeod from the Victoria, which is also part of the Corpus Christi area, has been kind of non-committal on this subject here.
At this point, there's been a major campaign to have listeners and viewers contact elected officials about their concerns over the possible loss of local PBS and NPR affiliates. It's something that should ring involvement by both listeners and viewers.
We know the Protect My Public Media campaign, which is at the site protectmypublicmedia.org, has been very successful. They've had over 1.7 million emails sent to members of Congress. Right now, we're urging people to actually call the offices of the members of Congress and express their interest in keeping public broadcasting.
And getting in touch with elected officials in Washington is what we at KEDT are urging. Both House and Senate must approve the president's rescission bill within 45 days or it goes away. But time is of the essence, since the House will probably vote on the issue early next week. That's the latest news and information on South Texas Midday. I'm Lon Gonzalez, your community arts calendar and more on the way.